On Tinder, women swipe right on men about 4% of the time. Online dating is a part-time job.
It feels like sales, it almost turns into a
It
number
is.
game. You just, how many times can you swipe? How many dates can you go on? Which kind of like defeats the purpose of it because it makes it more mechanical and not as social. And so it's hard to even to build that relationship.
Right. So every time you get an introduction in Laguna, it gives you a full disclosure of all the psychodynamics at play between you and a prospective person. So, where do you have points of friction? In which ways do you gel? How do you bring out the best in each other or the worst in each other? Right. What are things that you can likely do with each other?
Welcome, Sonny, to my startup podcast. It's a pleasure to talk with you once again after meeting you at one of my health tech events, or was it AI? I think it was an AI tech event in the
Yeah.
city.
Right.
And
Yeah.
how are things going? How have you been? Are you living in New York or New Jersey?
Yeah, I grew up in New Jersey, but living in the center of New York. Yeah, nomad.
Nice, nice nomad. Okay, so yeah, you're right in the heart of everything. How do you like living in the Midtown area?
Oh, it's like pure chaos.
Yeah, yeah.
But I meditate a lot. Actually, I do.
Oh, really?
Vipassana, if you've heard of that,
Sorry, what's it called?
Vipassana. It's like
Vipassana.
mindfulness
Okay.
meditation.
Yeah, no, I've done like some meditation. My brother's more into it, but he does a lot of like, mindfulness, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
It
I
definitely
do. I actually recently came back from a 10-day retreat. They do these
really.
10-day meditation courses. It was what I've done like 10 of them. Um, But yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it more later. But yeah, that's like a big part of my day to day is somehow running a startup and quantitative trading and trying to sneak in 2 hours of meditation a day for the last like 18 years.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's got to do wonders for your mental health. I should be more consistent with there. I haven't done it in a while myself, but I should get back into it.
Yeah, man, we should meditate sometime.
Yeah, hey, I'd be down. Absolutely. Um, all right, so and we may get into this in we'll start off with your backstory before we jump into the startup stuff, and maybe that'll lead us back into meditation. But yeah, so we talked about the startup stuff, the idea that you're working on at the event, but what led up to this point? Like we were talking, you grew up in the same county as I did in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Tell me more about your background and how things ended up where they are today.
I guess I'm kind of different than other people in that like I actually had a strong sense of what I wanted to do since I was like a little kid. And actually, like now that I'm reflecting on where things are going and where I'm at, there's like a weird kind of full circle aspect to it. But like, at the beginning, around like 10 years old, I got into, computers in the 90s. And somehow I ended up like in fifth grade, making websites about video games. Like as like a 10-year-old, I kind of got into video game journalism. Like, so I started with the passion of video games and then somehow I got into like websites, learning, HTML, etc. before middle school. And then I actually got really into it. And back then, you didn't have like FaceTime or, people Instagramming their stuff. So I happened to be like an above average writer for my age. And so I ended up putting together this thing by ninth grade. It was called Gaming World X. And like by writing like an adult and writing kind of inspirationally, I ended up having like a team of like 10 to 15 volunteer writers, like writing reviews, like editorial content, keeping track of the latest developments in the video game industry, like a team of 10 to 15
Interesting,
writers.
yeah.
That were all like I was actually the youngest person working on it, and sometimes I had to hide my age because like people didn't want to work for like a 12-year-old. And in hindsight, yeah, I did. Like, why would you?
Right, right.
But like actually that foray, I mean, it was very small scale. Like we ended up making like a few $1,000s a year from advertising, which for like 12-year-old, 13-year-old seemed
Not
like
bad.
really cool. Yeah. We ended up getting like developing PR relationships with video game companies. They would send us free video games, which I generally give to like a writer. And then actually it was my lifelong dream since I was 10 to go to E3. Have you heard of this?
I don't know if I know E3.
E3, it was like the biggest video game conference in the world. And so like every year you go to like people from around the world would go to LA and like play like the latest and hottest video games in this like crazy party. What was it? The Staples Center, amazing party, and like undercover vibe for like members of the press. And so like actually, you have to be 18 to get into it. And for a number of years, I was like sending people from my staff to go, but me as like the founder, like I couldn't go. And actually, it was a
Right.
crazy story where I had to like beg my dad to like let me go from New Jersey to LA, take some days off, even though like I already had a bunch of days off and they were threatening to suspend me. I had to go with my best friend, who was friend of a friend of like this drug dealer in Asbury Park, and I had to go like get a fake ID from this mom and pop store, just to go to E3.
Oh wow,
But like
nice.
I remember this I remember this like Indian uncle asking me like, so like, what do you need this ID for going clubbing? And I lied. I was like, yeah, it's for going clubbing. No, it's to go to like the nerdiest video game conference in the world. But whatever. Anyway, that was actually probably so. Like I snuck in, slightly underage, but it was probably the happiest experience of my life. I mean, like yeah, I look back to the Gaming World X days because like it got me really into technology and business. Like, I mean, I kind of started programming like in high school, but like web development back then wasn't really programming, sadly. I knew that like, I mean, I hated high school. I knew that I wanted to start something. I knew and at the time, like if I could have dropped out of high school and started a company, I would have. But like even in running this like video game journalism outlet, our big competitors were like IGN, GameSpot, and like looking back at it, these were like a bunch of adults with venture capital funding, and I was just like, like a prepubescent like 12-year-old. But it got me into technology and business, and I knew that I needed more education to like do these things properly, do them in a real competitive way where I could make a living off of it. And then so, thankfully, like I ended up going to Carnegie Mellon, which had very strong like comp sci and business programs. And so I started there as a double major. Um, Although I ended up figuring out that like business classes weren't super useful. Like it's mostly like PowerPoint and pretty much that, right? Like whereas, but like and actually, I thought I wanted to be a video game developer. Like I thought that was it. I'm like, okay, so let me learn how to program. Let me learn how to like write stories because I was really into like story-based video games, and like let me like someday start a studio of like making video games, and like that'll be a company, and so that way that'll combine everything that I'm into. And so what actually happened was that, so in my first semester, like, I learned just enough programming and I made my first video game. It was called Carnage Unleashed. And like, yeah. And I had this really bold vision for it where like, it's going to be episodic. We're going to release a new like level or chapter a week or a month or whatever. And, it's going to like proliferate into like this big saga. And I remember talking to the head of the Game Creation Society. His name was Chris DeLeon. He ended up being reasonably famous, Forbes 30 under 30. So good guy. He gave me some good advice because like I was like, yeah, here's this amazing vision, this great like rhythmic combat based game that I thought of. And I told it like he let me talk for like 20 minutes, like tell him this great vision. And he's like, by the end of it, he listened and he's like, all right, so Sonny, that sounds pretty good, but how about we do this instead of like pushing out like this whole game in a month? You just create like a demo, like an MVP in 6 months. Just make the basic engine and see where you're there from that. I'm like, listen, man, I think we can go a little bit further than that. And he's like, no. Anyway, so he turned out to be right. Like it took months to just like make like the basic like demo and engine. And that was cool. But then I realized that like video game programming in the grand scheme of like computer science and like algorithms, et cetera, like it's not the most algorithmically demanding unless you're working on like the video game engine side where you're doing like crazy computational graphics and physics and whatever. Like most of the time you're just applying like library calls from like an engine, and I'm not an artist, so like I wasn't, yeah. So I ended up like kind of getting into computer science because of video games, made one, and then I realized like I'm not interested in this at all.
Okay.
But the good news was that it showed me that I was actually super passionate about algorithms, just like addicted to like spending days slamming my head against the wall, figuring out how do you crack like some of these complex algorithms. And so I kind of went from there, and like, I moved pretty fast through college. I actually ended up graduating a year early. And like, yeah, all I kind of knew was that, I'm passionate about algorithms, like mathematical proofs, etc., and business. And so, okay, so I kind of meandered. Like I entered at Google, which at first I thought was like the biggest dream possible. Like I can't believe I did it. Like I was just in awe that like I pulled that off. That was my first job. What was I? I was like finishing being a sophomore. And I mean, because I was like technically graduating early, I was like kind of a senior. But anyway, so I ended up working there thinking it's like my dream job. Things like Google. I mean, I think it's even bigger and more bureaucratic now. I can't even imagine because back then, about 2007, it was already like, like as an intern, your first job, you kind of think like, oh, I'm going to go like work on the search engine and this and that.
Right.
But yeah, like I love Google. But then it's like, yeah, you go there, and even back then, like yeah, like the demands for like getting through the interview process extremely high. Um, but then it turns out like 99% of Google doesn't work on search. Actually, literally, like virtually 100% of people don't work on anything you've ever heard of. I worked on something called Google Health, where some people think they might have heard of it, but actually Google Health's been started and scrapped like multiple times over the years. And like, there's just so many politics, so many demands, so much like bureaucracy over every little app that will never even see the light of day. And I've heard this is true for like Microsoft and all the big tech giants. So I was told that it's like, oh, I had to do all this like complex algorithm problems to get the job. And now I'm here and we're just doing web development. And there's like this MIT grad who's been there for years. He's just like, yeah, we joke about that sometimes. I realized though that like, look, Google's an incredible place to work. If you work on something amazing there, I mean, there's a lot of people that do. And, the perks, especially back then, were incredible. Like even as an intern, you're getting free massages. You have like an on-site sushi chef, etc. But, for me, like I knew that I wanted to go back, like that this was like not going towards like my entrepreneurial, ambitions ultimately. And then like shortly after that, like I had a friend who kind of like I actually hated the idea of finance. But like I had a friend who basically opened my eyes and said like, what, you're like making money for like pension funds and like and yeah, all these people who are like, trying to save. And like, so like like not only is the societal impact not negative, like I might have thought, that like there's actually tranches that are extremely fascinating. A lot of things I used to think were boring are probably actually pretty interesting once you get deeply into them and into real life problems. But for me, what I got really into was I learned about this thing called quantitative trading, where it's basically like you have to make competitive algorithms to make money, right? So right there, you have an intersection of business and algorithms. And I was like, okay, that clicks. That sounds good. It's funny how little, like there's a lot of aspiring quants. And unfortunately, it's like an extremely shrunken and dwindling industry. Not that it's not making money, it's that it's shrunk to an oligopoly. There's just a handful of firms that make billions, and actually they've just been in the news printing like $8 billion last quarter. But there's, it's a very winner take all structure. But the point is, there's a lot of people on the outside of quant trading, and people may really want to get into it. But once you get into it, like, you have no idea what it is because it's so opaque. But thankfully, like I managed to get a job at a couple of quant funds. So actually, starting at age 20, I started working in high frequency trading, and I actually celebrated my 21st birthday with coworkers, and yeah, ended up getting wasted. Like somehow we ended up back at the office. I mean, the company's now defunct, so I can admit, like I fell asleep at the president's desk while people played ping pong outside. Yeah, it was a crazy night. But anyway, so point is, I got into quant trading. I worked at a couple of hedge funds. Yeah, I basically had the job of a PhD, like being a quant strategist. That itself is probably its own story. But yeah, by 22, right? And so actually, I worked with a number of PhDs, like physics PhDs from like Princeton, etc. And I mean, quant trading is an interesting field because there's a lot of like massive intellectual talent, but a lot of people fail at it. The things it takes to actually succeed at quant trading, it's interesting because like if it's just a question of pure mathematical skill, then like everyone who had it as an IMO gold medal or even all these like Nobel Prize winners would just be billionaires, but they're not. And like there's the long-term capital management stories like of Nobel laureates like losing billions of dollars and so on and so forth. But like, it's interesting what it really takes to succeed in like an empirical research based like hyper competitive industry, right? So basically like, already in quant trading. So that's basically what I've been doing, since I was 20. Now in my undisclosed 30s. All right, fine, late 30s.
Are you currently still doing quant trading, or are you like on your own, or with a company, or are you focusing full time on startup stuff now?
So yeah, I worked for a couple of hedge funds, and then I went off on my own, and I used to manage investor money. Now I've been trading my own money, and so like I was trying to basically make like a huge quant fund. That was my goal. Like as I got more momentum, I had a couple of incredible years, but it's such a hyper competitive and like saturated and mature industry that like the margin for error is hyper thin. So yeah, I ended up not hitting that escape velocity to like make a big quant firm, but I have enough and I know enough to basically make money for myself each year. So, so what
That's
happened was,
great. Yeah.
I had some crazy ups and downs, a lot of, there's interesting partner drama, even in, the quant trading space. And so a couple of years, like 2022, I'd basically been doing it for like 15 years. Like I'm still passionate about the problems and the space, but I realized like this dream of making like, let's say $1 billion company, it's probably not going to happen in quant trading. Like I can make like decent money, but you're not going to make something disruptive. And also in quant trading, like the actual research of figuring out algorithms, and it's basically hyper competitive machine learning, to figure out patterns and do this thing called statistical arbitrage. And so I realized that like I took a break from it. So I got to a point where I have some longer term. I'm not doing high frequency right now, but I have some longer term algorithms that can basically make my year's income with like 2 to 3 hours of work a year. So
So do you find like you're able to, because I always kind of operated on for a long time now, like the idea that most people aren't able to beat the market. It's very tough to beat the market. Even like, very bright people on Wall Street,
for sure.
if you look over the span of 30 years, they end up not beating the market. But do you feel like, if you know the algorithms, you know the machine learning well enough, you're able to consistently beat the market? Because I know my one good friend, he feels he's been doing it for 2 years now, similar to you, and he's making good money. So I'm curious if you feel like this is something that someone that's good at that does have very good quantitative skills can by themselves just kind of play the market.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so yeah, like the quantitative skills are extremely important. A good scientific and research mindset is also extremely important. But there is also like, and the smaller of a team you work on, the more market intuition matters. And it's not necessarily market intuition in like, oh, I see this pattern, there's like this breakdown, and price is going to go up. I mean, that can help. But like a lot of it is about understanding the physics of the market. Like, and these are kind of invisible physics if you're just kind of click trading. For example, you might have like regime switching convergence dynamics. And like you think about modeling things as like latent stochastic volatilities in which, you have different regimes, et cetera. Right. And then there might be, different kind of like trajectory or informational dynamics, correlation dynamics, et cetera. And so, like you have to learn a lot of things. You find an edge. The big thing about quant trading is that it's, they call it alpha decay. But like you can break your back and find these inefficiencies and make a living. You can make millions and millions of dollars in a year. And then for some reason, the next year it works half as much. And then in 3 years, it's just gone.
Mhm.
Or, you have these drawdowns and you're like, wait, what happened? And so, like it's a tricky thing because, the market is always evolving. They call it non-stationarity, in quant speak. But like, different things and also different types of strategies have different rates of alpha decay. And high frequency actually has the fastest. So, like if you have a less stable but longer term edge, you might actually be able to trade that for a few years. And so, I can talk about it for a long time, but yeah, quant trading is a big ecosystem. And like different people can all kind of coexist going after different niches, although none of them will really survive forever. And so the big firms in the oligopoly, I mean, you have massive think tanks and like billions of dollars spent on R&D to basically like make the alpha decay rate at least match the innovation rate, right? So, people talk about alpha decay all the time in that space, but very few people talk about the innovation rate. Whereas like the big players, I mean, they know how to do it. Like, having a very, open and like creative research environment, hiring people who already like are established in research careers in different like scientific domains, like Renaissance hires, astrophysicists, bioinformatics, et cetera. And so, I mean, basically you have to keep researching, like if you want to do this sustainably. And so, that kind of brings me to the next thing, which is closer to where I'm at, which is that like, so in quant trading, you have this like scientific rigor. Like you have to figure out things that work empirically, that work out of sample, that don't just work in your head. Otherwise you're going to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions, And so, yeah, around, what was it, 2022. So, I have these other interests. Like I'm a fan of like, mindfulness, meditation. I've been a huge fan of social psychology. I value my human relationships a lot in my life, and like ended up playing like mentor or even marriage counselor somehow, saving at least 1 or 2 marriages for some reason, which maybe I should.
There you go. Nice.
But in my late 20s, like I'd also started to notice like different patterns in social psych, different phenomena, and also being being a single man most of my life. And then the proliferation of online dating has, I guess, I mean, anyone who's on the apps right now can probably tell you that online dating is a part-time job. Right. And like you can be good at it or bad at it. And especially most men are bad at it, although pretty much everyone is bad at finding an enduring relationship from that. And
Yeah,
so,
no, there's no doubt about it. I mean, it feels like sales, it almost turns into a number game. You just, how many times can you swipe? How many dates can you go on per month or et cetera? So which kind of like defeats the purpose of it because it makes it more mechanical and not as like, not as social. And so it's hard to even, to build that relationship. And everyone's thinking, oh, I have so many other options out there. I can just hop back on the app because everyone thinks that no one commits to anyone. So yeah, there's definitely that dynamic there.
yeah, there's the illusion of choice. I mean, yeah, I have so many things to say what you
Yeah.
just said. Yeah, there's so many layers of pain in online dating. I mean, there's swipe fatigue, there's dating fatigue, like being the excess abundance of choice, but also the fact that like, we're just matching at random, so to circle back to my own path, I've had different startup ideas over the years, not enough to like pull me away from quant trading. I actually felt that online dating was an extremely inefficient industry. And coming from like, quantitative trading slash, what we call alpha based background, we look at all these random processes, like a random walk, like the market is modeled as, and you try to find some non-random edge. And so in trading, you don't have to be right anywhere close to 100% of the time. You could be right 51% of the time and make millions of dollars. And actually something people don't talk about, except for maybe practitioners, is you don't even need to be right 51% of the time. You can be right 10% of the time. But when you win big. And actually some of my most profitable and enduring strategies are like that. You lose 90% of the time, but it's okay. By the end of the year, I can pay my bills. But
Now, how would you know in that case? Sorry, for the trading case, I'm just curious if you have a quick answer to this. How do you know when to bet big? When you're hitting that 10% versus when you're hitting the other 90%.
Well, so it depends.
Yeah.
If you like, basically, if it's in your model and you have some sort of signal that has a 10% win rate, but when you win big.
Yeah.
With no further information, you won't know. You will just
Okay.
you should just
Yeah.
bet a constant size. And you endure your drawdowns, and then you make it all back and survive. Now, if you are able to come up with some secondary factors, maybe you have some things that kind of forecast volatility, you can enhance the model and with, let's say, a sizing model, and then bake that in. I mean, yeah, if you have that kind of intelligence, that would
Right.
enhance the strategy. But if you don't have it, like all things being equal, like once you've exhausted what you actually know about the market, you just have
Yeah.
to play it evenly and take your emotions out of the equation.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But you were about to plug that into the dating scene. I'm curious now about
Exactly.
that. Yeah.
Right. So, I had different, dating startup ideas over the years because I see there's a lot of inefficiency with online dating apps. They proliferated to like 95 to 97% use among like adults from like 21 to 45 in all the major cities. Right. It used to be like obscure or weird, for you to meet someone online. Now it's weird if you don't meet online. So the thing is like similar to like, the broker dealers on the trading floors of the 90s, people were just like buying and selling kind of random. But like if you're the person that people come to buy and sell, you don't need any alpha. You don't need any predictive model. Like you're just kind of capturing that spread. And similarly, like the match group with like Hinge, Tinder, etc. Right? Like you're basically dating at random. Yeah, like that's it. Right. But you have all the market share because like all other dating apps don't have any, statistical or psychological intelligence either. You have marketing and you have branding, right? But ultimately the product is the same. And so all the dating apps are matching at random. And B, there's no technology moat around these products, right? So like there's no even before AI, like a college student can make a dating app in a week or two. And so like, right, and you're replicating like 95% of the functionality of Tinder or Hinge, right? With like just sophomore level computer science skills. So like clearly, these products are not competing on technology, even though they advertise otherwise. And we can circle back to that. But like, when you have basically an industry that's all perfect competition, right? Because everyone has the same product, then it all becomes about like marketing and branding. And, especially Hinge has done a good job at, basically being the same product, but making people believe otherwise.
Yeah, they have different features and functionalities. Like there's the most compatible match, but then it never turns out to be that they're that compatible. And then there's yeah, it shows you quote unquote your type, which I think it does. It does seem to know your type, but it doesn't show you necessarily your type that will end up well
Right.
for you.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I have a lot to say on that note. Like two
yeah.
things. I mean, the compatibility and what is your quote unquote type. Well, I guess to preface though, I mean, so the core idea I had in like 2022, 2023 was how do we bring alpha? How do we bring some amount of statistical intelligence to dating, right? And like, how do we take the fact that there are patterns, there are psychological patterns, they're not perfect, but they can statistically accelerate the matchmaking process, the dating process, right? And so the main thing though is like, talking to people, and this is men and women, but especially women, and like it's, I think it's fascinating. I think people should be more educated about like the behavioral differences between men and women, especially when it comes to online dating, because both sides are suffering, for very different ways. Like for example, like the median woman, on Hinge or Tinder, they're getting several matches a day, if not more,
Right.
maybe up
Yeah.
to 50. But the median man gets like a match a month.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're talking about heterosexual
Yeah.
population, but but like in every man, who's listening will, nod their head, like, yeah, obviously
It's
online dating
definitely,
works.
yeah,
And
in imbalance. Yeah, for sure.
and what's sad is almost every woman I tell the statistic to, they laugh. Like there's like no sympathy. Like what? You can't
Right.
get
Salt in the
online
wounds,
dating?
right?
Yeah. But so the core idea I had though was like taking social psychology patterns, and figuring out how do we accelerate this process of finding someone that's at least relationship worthy, right? And so my background's in this like empirical, like hyper competitive statistical forecasting, and so like the idea is like okay, so because things aren't perfect, right? Like especially in the market, like even the people printing billions of dollars, they're not right on every trade. Similarly, we're not right in every connection that we forecast. However, well, there's a few interesting things that have already happened with this app that we built called Laguna. Instead of, let's say, on average, it takes meeting people randomly like 50 times to find a relationship. On average, we can cut that down 10x. So if you went on dates, like 5 dates, for example, and you filtered for exclusively high compatibility people that you are, at least moderately attracted to, then that's the expectation for how long it will take to find your next relationship. So it's basically about identifying who are the high compatibility leads and cutting out the chaff. Well, so the way I started was, like with quant trading, you have to back test. You come up with like a model and you figure out that does add a sample. So once LLMs came out, I realized there was a way to efficiently and like faster than anyone in the world figure out different core things about someone's personality. And so that includes like psychometric signals, and also I created like hundreds of psycholinguistic signals, which I think is a new field of research. Apps like eHarmony and all these other things where they ask you hundreds of questions about your personality. But there's a couple of things. One is that like those are way too long. Like even in a social psych class in college, like I remember trying to go through it. It's like 500 questions. Like I couldn't get through. And if you like start putting the same answer for each question, like they're like, no, start over.
Yeah.
So it's almost prohibitive to get through. And even if some people did it, you'd be missing out on the vast majority of the population who doesn't have the patience. And then secondly, like things that use personality at all, like they don't calibrate it scientifically. They're just like, oh, I think people, both have the same favorite color, and both like to go out to movies on weekends. I think they should get together. Hey, those are nice.
Yeah.
To have in common. And that's the same for like OkCupid, which would also ask people hundreds of questions and give you some sort of score. But the point is there's no scientific weighting, right? There's actually things that are relevant to harmony and compatibility in a relationship. And there are other things that are nice to have. So like, I guess let me explain that like part of how, we came up with this compatibility model is one, it's like an extension of actually known social psychology research from decades that's just sitting in shelves that nobody actually cares to monetize, because like the Match Group, they already have a monopoly and predominant market share on online dating, so they're just competing with themselves. They have no reason to give you high compatibility matches sooner, or to hire like psychological scientists to actually build a model that predicts it. Like there's no incentive. They're printing
Does
billions
the
of
Match
dollars.
Group they own which apps? Hinge and Tinder, or
They own Hinge, Tinder, the League, and actually, like, so I've done tremendous amount of competitive research and like SEC filings analysis. All these things that you don't even think they would own. Like you think there's like a bunch of dating apps on the App Store.
I had no idea.
All owned by Mac. So like even BLK, which is for the Black community, Chispa, which is for the Hispanic community, and all these other things. Like you think like, oh yeah, I'm not going to use Tinder. I'm going to use like this for my racial demographic. Guess what? You're still giving your money to Match Group.
The same thing, yeah. That's crazy.
And so it's the same product, and it's very smart, right? They've acquired all their competitors, put it all under one umbrella, and so there's no more competition. So yeah, people ask like, oh, why doesn't Match Group like try to actually figure out compatibility? It's because they don't need to, and if anything, it would be detrimental to their profits, right? There's actually a lot of demand for for compatibility, right? Like you said, the Hinge is most compatible, and actually that's something I talked about while doing market research for Laguna. Is that both men and women, like they love the idea of most compatible. Who wouldn't, right?
Sure.
But especially talking to women, they're like, yeah, I tried it, I was excited, but then I realized, oh, it was just random. It was just the same as any other match, right? So I stopped getting excited, right? And so the Match Group and Hinge will say like, oh, this is your most compatible, but we're not going to tell you why because it's like super proprietary. Like, just trust us. Somebody here has a PhD. We cracked this code. But then, like, obviously the results from like virtually everyone, right. like deny that. and so like speaking of online dating and things like Hinge or Tinder, I mean, there are people who have, met their significant others or spouses. There's even people who've met their spouse from the first person they dated on Hinge. But guess what? Like a broken clock is right twice a day, right? When you're talking about like, a statistical process, right? Like there are some people who get lucky. Right. And so our research shows that like you are high compatibility. So for example, like Laguna gives you compatibility scores from 1 to 10. So the way we started was I took dozens of long-term couples. I invented this reduced 3-question survey, which is open-ended, but you can finish in 5 to 10 minutes. Well, I started by reducing 500 questions to 3 questions. And then I tested that like even with like 100 question psychometric surveys that we got the same results. Like 98% of the time, right? So like that's already a massive invention that we came up with, was figuring out like much lower mentally inconvenient survey processes to get the same underlying data to then accurately figure out psychological predictions with. Basically that was the problem we solved. That's how I started.
Yeah.
And then secondly, you're saying?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, I'm curious how you set up these surveys and how you got so much feedback and were able to pare it down to those core questions that really are predicting for what the outcome of the relationship will be. Because it's such an important part of starting a company is doing that initial survey and getting customer feedback and figuring out what's actually going on, getting that like domain knowledge, that experimental empirical knowledge. So I'm curious how you went about that and pared it down to make it so lean.
So some of our advantage, I guess, is twofold in terms of like how we were able to hit the ground running with like such a competitively strong approach. Is that one in that like we're kind of standing on the shoulders of giants. Like there's decades of psychological research that has analyzed compatibility in different ways. I mean, actually, a lot of their statistical techniques are weaker than what we do in quantitative trading. That's part of how I've been able to make better models is like coming from right. Kill statistical modeling background versus like, here's some like T-stat of something. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Let's put it in and we'll make money either way. That's not true for my background. And that's kind of completely against my philosophy in building products. And then secondly, it's that, there are strong things we've been able to take from the literature, but they're just completely ignored by competitors because as I said, there's no reason for like any meaningful like hardcore social scientist to like actually like create a cutting edge compatibility model at the Match Group.
Right, because if they match right away, then yeah, I mean you lose a customer, you lose 2 customers, right? They get off the app, they get married. So where do you see your application going if you match people right away? Of course, you'll be very competitive against Hinge. Everyone will want to use your application, but then how do you pitch that to investors, or are you more focused on really solving this problem, not so worried about how much of people's time can we waste and how much money can we make from it?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I appreciate your second part of making me sound good, even if I didn't think about how this makes the business not viable. But so part of how I've been thinking about it is that the moment that like ChatGPT 3.5 came out, right, and we entered this new AI revolution, it's like this happens in markets too, but basically there's so much underlying disruption in the way the world could and should be. Yeah, like everything really needs to center around exploiting that as much as possible. And like if you're looking to like maximize I guess economic realities, or also the value to yourself, the value to customers in any space, like we all have to be creative in thinking about how can we better apply this disruptive technology and solving as many problems as possible. So for me, part of the LLM revolution was like, okay, so I use LLMs for one layer. It's not, and to be clear, and I can talk about this alone for hours. Our model like uses LLM calls sparingly, but it helps us solve the 100 question problem. And that like we can basically ask you one question and figure out your personality and a lot of other things about you. But that we are harnessing the power of LLMs, but I'm only using it for compression. Right. So you write something open-ended and I compress what you wrote into our vector space, our feature space. And then we run our proprietary model, which keeps learning as we get data and feedback from new users. And so, ultimately, yes, this is about accelerating, finding highly compatible people, relationship-worthy people. And so, to answer that question, it's that the other reason I think, right, like this business opportunity exists is because with LLMs, like, so, I mean, not to toot my own horn, I'm probably qualified to be a 10x software developer. But then, so me plus LLMs, right? Before AI came out like this, I would have had to hire a team of mobile developers, like back-end engineers, etc. But, it's been a process. But like, I actually have been able to not hire at all. I mean, I have a wonderful founding designer, Ben. Like, my cost basis for running this is like many orders of magnitude lower than Match Group, right? And also, it's already weird that like a sophomore software developer can make a dating app, and yet Hinge has like tens of millions of dollars of like operating cost every year. Like it actually doesn't cost that much to build a dating app, right? If you keep it lean. And now with the LLM revolution, right? Like the cost, my overhead for doing everything that Hinge does, plus so much more, like astronomically more on the scientific side, is extremely low. So basically, like, yes, if I give you your highly compatible matches early in your swiping journey, yes, you may use this less. But two things. One is that because my cost base is much lower, I can afford to undercut competitors, right? I don't have to keep people on the hamster wheel. Like if they're making $20 per customer, right, I can make $10 or $5, right? And it's like basically all profit. Right. And so basically, I can give people high quality matches faster because my cost structure is so much lower.
Right.
And also, of course, right, it helps build like trust in our brand and, serves our company's mission. But I would say, right, by keeping the economics much leaner, right, we can now afford to not play this hamster wheel game that the Match Group is now addicted to. Because look, until like users say they are, tired of, the swiping roulette, tired of this like burning out rat race, the Match Group or whatever will not have to adapt. And actually, they probably are not qualified, right? Because like the people who are the first movers in this space, Match Group, Tinder, etc., right? Like pivoting into like an AI and like social psychology based forecasting approach to dating, it's going to be a hard pivot. Right. And in general, with disruptions like this, it's not the old guard that makes the transition. It's usually, startups like ours that end up like slowly taking market share away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would imagine, I mean, if if your app proves to really match people at a significantly higher rate than Hinge, than Tinder, I would imagine you'd be able to charge a lot more. I mean, if I'm going into the dating the dating pool, and I see, okay, an app can charge or is charging $1,000 for a 50% chance to, meet the match of my life, that'd be worth it, right? I'd be willing to pay a lot more. So, of course, I know you said, you'd be able to charge lower prices up front than the competition, but if it can really deliver, then this is something extremely valuable that people will be willing to pay a lot of money for.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's interesting because, we haven't talked about it, but there's also this human matchmaking industry because there's so much pain in the online dating app industry. But there's actually a rise of these human matchmakers like Talkify, 3 Day Rule, Keeper, where they're charging people $1,000 to $5,000 per date, $1,000 to $5,000 per date, with like
Yeah.
$10,000 to $50,000 retainers. And a lot of people, like even that aren't millionaires, say something to similar to what you just said, which is like, right, I would, yeah, like if it's really the love of my life, I would pay 50,
Right.
pay 100,000,
Yeah.
pay 200,000 maybe. And it's unfortunate because these people like Talkify, like they are targeting, 25-year-olds to 50-year-olds and above. But like, and you can read some of the experiences people are having where like, like $50,000 is a lot of their like life savings, but they're alone. They want to find their mate and they haven't been able to, just trying it random. And so they spend it and then, they go on a few mediocre dates and now they're just poorer and more jaded. But so, some of the promise with Laguna. So, we're still getting through like, the pilot process, like building out the brand and the user base. But like even on like, and so the numbers are only going to get better for multiple reasons. Like as more, users try out Laguna. But like, for example, like on Tinder, women swipe right on men about 4% of the time.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. And so, men, it's closer to 50. And so for Laguna, even with our initial thousands or thousands of users, women are swiping right on men 37% of the time, like more than 9 times as often.
Yeah.
Right. And like, there's a number of reasons for that. But I mean, basically, it's like, right. I mean, we'd like to get that number higher. Right. And it's possible, like, maybe taking a more like personalized, like having a human in the loop matchmaker process would get like, we could use the Laguna technology and then have a personalized matchmaker who plugs you in. And then you charge people thousands of dollars. So you could do that. And I mean, right. Like, I think absolutely, like, if you take the fact that we have a model, we have all this AI versus just saying we have AI, like virtually everyone else does, like, where is it? Right. And that's another note on like the Hinge most compatible thing, right? Where it's like Hinge and even the human matchmakers, they're all like, oh, we know compatibility, trust us. And yet with Hinge, yes, they use some kind of algorithm, but it's clearly not much better than a race and religion and age filter, right? So like when people say type, they're like, oh, you're finding someone my type. It's like, oh, they're my age, they're my race, and they're like in my city. That's pretty good. And there are people who think like that. Actually, when we interview users, there's like 30 to 40% of people think that these superficial demographic filters are good enough. And like, hey, they get dates, they go on. And like, but I talk to them and like, I'm like, so are you in a relationship? No, but like, Hinge is pretty good, right? Like I can look at their school, I can look at their photos. And it's like, well, how many dates do you still have to go on before you find a relationship? You're like, I don't know, like dozens, right? All right. So it's like, even if someone is like Jewish, white, 33, lives in New York, guess what? You've tried that, and that doesn't automatically imply compatibility. There's still a lot more. And guess what? Right. Our operating hypothesis is that it's based on who you are as a person. Like, like anyone can look at photos, like, right. Laguna has photos, right? We're matching the way chemistry works online. And on that note, I think there's actually a lot you can do to improve it. There's a lot more. And like, actually, not everyone is passionate about psychology as I am. Not everyone is passionate like scientific researcher. So that's fine. Like leave that to people like us who who do it in the background. But then unlike anyone on the planet, we explain it, right? So every time you get an introduction in Laguna, it gives you a full disclosure of all the psychodynamics at play between you and a prospective person. So, where do you have points of friction? In which ways do you gel? How do you bring out the best in each other or the worst in each other? Right? What are things that you can likely do with each other? And then, we even produce like personalized conversation and date ideas that are unique to the two of you. And so, nobody has that accountability. And if we're wrong, we ask you to tell us. Right? So the transparency and the accountability, like, unfortunately, there's no one in the world that does that,
And this feedback, I'm assuming it's written by an LLM based on the answers to the questions that you mentioned before.
Well, so what we do is we have a 3-step process. So we take so you have your open-ended answers that you put when you onboard, and then we translate into our mathematical and linguistic feature space, and then we do a bunch of computations that we've learned from backtesting on other long-term couples. And then there's a library of psychodynamics we have from like aggregate social psychology literature. And then so it crunches these numbers and then outputs a numerical score and then a list of basically these like shared interests, perspective data, conversation data ideas, and then the psychodynamics at play in your relationship. And so that's basically a report, like a verbal report. Now, but that comes out a little robotic. So what we do is in a third step, we go through like our psychodynamic projection of you and another person, and then we re-express it into a more user-friendly way. And you know that's still something we're improving, like you're playing with the tonality and personalization of that. But yeah, so it's three steps: compression, the psychophysics model, and then re-expression.
Okay. And you mentioned that it I know maybe you're not showing this to the front end user, but you mentioned that it has suggested date topic ideas that might provide good chemistry during the date. Is that based on like, so it's looking at what these people's interests are and what
so the key thing is
engaging? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's funny that like more and more dating apps are all about quote unquote interests, but really interests, it's such a bizarre user experience thing that all these people have decided to do. It's like, here's like, so you onboard on like Tinder or Coffee Meets Bagel or The Lead or whatever. And it's like, here's hundreds of bubbles of interest that you can click on. Who does that? Who has the time to like scroll down and find a little bubble that says whiskey or running or whatever, right? And like, it's such a weird thing. And so now all the apps have this thing where you select a bubble. And if someone else selected that bubble, it shows you, hey, you both selected this bubble. But guess what? You can also only pick 5 bubbles, right? Like as if you have like some weird set of interests that defines you from like this weird pre-selected, pool. So the core thing about Laguna is that it's semantically intelligent. And this is also why Laguna has the world's only romantic search engine. But not only is it a search engine that works, it's semantically intelligent. So for both the compatibility analysis and when you're searching, it finds conceptual relationships. And so if you like gin and somebody else likes cocktails, well, it will identify you probably both like going out to bars, right? You might like bar hopping, you might like nightlife, or at minimum, you both like spirits, right? So like if things are semantically related, you'll find it. Yeah. So it'll go through any kind of conceptual overlap to kind of maximize like your commonality. Because in a relationship, that's what happens too, right? You don't need someone who likes vanilla ice cream if you like chocolate ice cream. If you both list those as things you both like ice cream. Maybe you both like desserts. Good enough, right? There's other things like, the way you guys actually get along, like the psychodynamics are actually the most predictive thing in our research for what makes relationships last, right?
And can you give like an example of a psychodynamic and how two different ones or say similar ones might be good matches?
Right. So yeah, I can give you a bunch of examples. And actually the higher level theme here is that, the questions are, do birds of a feather flock together, or is it that opposites attract? And so it turns out it's both, depending on the dimension. Like obviously, right? Like if you just think about it common sense, like, in some ways you need complementarity, in some ways you need similarity. Laguna also identifies both of these to you in every introduction. And so like a way in which people need to be opposite. So like when you have a person in a relationship that's extremely stubborn, now if they end up with someone else who's extremely stubborn, like are they likely to get along? Well, maybe if they happen to be super aligned in everything. Right, yeah. Like you're both I don't know, religious orthodox.
Sure,
you better be the same damn religion, and so on. Right, like if someone's like super stubborn and they're vegan, and the other one's not, but they're also super stubborn. Right, like they're gonna frequently be at odds.
It's gonna be tough.
Yeah. There are relationships where that happens, but they happen to be super aligned, and so they have a little bit less friction, but might still be explosive friction. In which case they really need to work on their conflict resolution. But more often than not, what you have is like if someone is extremely stubborn in a relationship, someone way more outgoing, more adaptive, go with the flow, like that tends to pair well. So like in the big 5, right, someone who's extremely high in conscientiousness may like someone who's extremely low. And it's almost a polarity thing. It's like the more stubborn you are, the more outgoing a person you tend to naturally gel with. And so another big one is in terms of complementarity is like if someone likes to be the center of attention, like me, right? Like I actually like people who may be more reserved, but are really good listeners. Like, I don't need my partner to be quiet, but I really like to be listened to and feel heard, right, when I'm talking to my partner. And
Right.
that tends to correlate with a more introverted personality, right? So here, like, right, the more extroverted, the more you kind of like want the spotlight or enjoy the spotlight. I mean, that's putting it a little pejoratively, but people are who they are. I actually don't judge
Sure.
any
Sure.
personality type. Um, but the more someone else, like the more the foil of that will balance you out. And then people closer to the middle on that, like if you're an ambivert, then yeah, go ahead, meet another ambivert. Like that's not right. Like so, ambiverts will show higher compatibility scores with other ambiverts according to our model. Now, in a way in which similarity drives things is like people who like very cerebral conversations, like me and you, for example, right?
Yeah.
Like that speaks
Right.
very well to us being compatible with each other, right? At least on a social level. People who are more emotionally sensitive likely need someone else more emotionally sensitive, and vice versa, right? Like people who like are very like bookish, more kind of bottom line or informationally driven. Yeah, they tend to like people like that as well.
So do you find it to be like pretty consistent? Like that's the social dynamic space. Like you can reliably see that certain characteristics, more similar people that are similar in that space get along well together, and others more different in that space. Is it consistent, or does it depend if this person's reserved, but they also like to I don't know, maybe they're outgoing when they go to the bar or something, or whatever.
Yeah,
How
I
do
think the
you
key thing.
factor
Yeah,
in those other factors?
right. So I think the key thing is, especially with these factors, and this is why
Yeah.
psychometrics get hate unnecessarily. It's because look, thinking statistically is very hard, right?
Yeah.
And so like no one is 100% anything. No one's
Yeah.
100% extrovert. No one's
Right.
100% like judgmental, etc. You have to be able to use these things in like a fuzzy logic kind of way. And
Yeah.
thankfully, that's something I've trained myself to be very good at for like 18 years. And so yeah, it's like right. You have to learn how to think statistically. And also, like in compatibility space, nothing is perfect. No one is perfect. And so, one interesting metric we found is that, like, so long term couples that we've analyzed, so by the way the statistical distributions work, like, you will get less than a five with like 80% of the population. So it's not
Okay.
even. It's not like,
Five
at least,
being the best possible match.
oh, no,
Yeah.
10 is the best.
Oh, 10. Oh, wow. So you'll get that
So
low
it's
with.
skewed. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
like most of the people, right, you meet will not even get a five on your score,
Okay. Wow.
according to our model. Because like basically what it comes down to is like, look, you and your listeners, you can go out and just realize like realistically, you're probably really compatible with 10% of the population. Thankfully, that's true for like everyone, right? Everyone is like, gets along with a certain fragment of the population, right? And
Right.
like, there are different psychodynamics at play in each of them, but there are some common threads. That's kind of what we honed in on. But like a high compatibility score in our model is very hard to get. However, almost all the long-term couples we've seen have a 7 to 9 in our compatibility score.
Wow.
And I've never seen a couple that lasts that's below a 5. Like, even that is fringe, but like, and even then it's like, because I backtested on couples that I knew, like the ones that were closer to a 5, I mean, they have, like, what I've noticed is they have extremely good conflict resolution. But like, yeah, they don't necessarily come off as this like effervescent, highly compatible couple. It's like they
Those are
work
the ones that do last or don't last.
the lowest compatibility score of people
Yeah.
that do last I've seen is
Oh, I see. I see.
so
I
I
see.
haven't seen anyone less than a 5. So and so actually, I just had someone, I won't disclose their name, but like they were doing a rushed long distance arranged marriage, and they came to me like asking me to run their compatibility analysis, and I was like, wow, this is an interesting use case. But I
Yeah.
was like a little scared because they were planning their wedding anyway. They came to me kind of late, and I
Right. You
had to
don't want
go
to ruin
through
the
it.
wedding. Yeah.
And I warned her like up front. I'm like, look, I've never seen anyone last less than a 5. If you
Yeah.
are like right, I mean, we're still like getting more and more like out of sample data. So like, I don't know if you want to disrupt your whole life plan
Right.
because of
Right.
my AI model, but but I warned her, like, look, if it's less than a 5, I'm gonna have to take it for whatever it's worth. Like, recommend,
Right.
red
Put the
flag,
necessary disclaimers in there. Yeah.
right? But they took it and they got a 5.6. And so they seemed
Interesting.
extremely incompatible from everything she was telling me. But they got a 5.6. So, fortunately, I didn't have to intervene.
Right. Yeah. Are they good problem solvers? That's relationship problem solvers, and that'll
Right,
that'll
right.
tell us, right?
But yeah, so I mean, another interesting thing. So where we've gone from here, coming back to my life story, is that like, so we're building out Laguna, and the funny thing is, actually, my research for Laguna, I ended up in my own long-term relationship. Girls I was dating while I was building this model, I would have them fill out our
Yeah.
Big Three questionnaire, and actually, it kind of lined up.
And sorry, so what are those three questions again?
So, yeah. So back to like how so we took the core of the questions from something that's been empirically validated in psychological research. So it's
Yeah.
called the I am survey. And so
Yeah.
we've gamified it a bit, kind of turns into emojis as you write this and pops and flies away. But basically, and the key thing about our onboarding is that it's completely confidential, right? So for us to get high quality signal about who you are, we have to, we invented this thing I call matchmaker client confidentiality. Like anything you tell to us, we are not going to show directly to other users ever, right? So that's in the
Okay.
vault.
Yeah.
And so you do the survey just between us, and this also takes away all the stress and pressure and like misleading information of like hinge profiles because everyone's just posturing and like signaling
Right.
profiles and like I mean whatever I can rant about that for a while. So like
Yeah.
online, even if you try to filter on text, even if you try to be less superficial, you can't do it because the information is not there on a profile.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
That's
why you
true.
need like a socially engineered, psychosocial engineered onboarding process like ours. And so, you come in, we show you like this part's confidential. Don't worry. Just be stream of consciousness, say whatever comes to mind. And so you fill in the blank 10 times. I am blank. I am blank. I am blank. And actually, this was already discovered, from other researchers over the decades that people start filling that out superficially, like, or maybe even silly, like I am cool, I'm a good worker, blah blah blah. But around like 6 or 7, you do this 6 7 times, you start to get real, and people
Okay.
frequently get really vulnerable. Like it's hard not to. You're almost like, I
Yeah.
don't want to do this.
Right.
Like, because it's forcing you to like say a little something about who you are, and then that
Yeah.
actually gives us enough signal to be like super accurate, like eerily accurate. And actually, a cool way to test this. And so, even if you're in a relationship, you can install Laguna and have a friend or your significant other sign up for it, and then it'll you can go through your contacts and generate custom compatibility reports with people that you know and people you may have known for years. So that's actually the thing that gives people the most confidence in Laguna is like testing it on people you already know. And like there, it's been eerily accurate. Like everyone I've shown, like a friend Sid, he's tested on his like best friends, his like girlfriend of 7 years, and like he's getting 8s to 9s with all of them, and like the point by point psychodynamics are like they're just weirdly accurate.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I love the idea of that as like a hook to get people on to onboard them. I mean, it's always, there's so many dating apps out there. The last thing someone wants is to, try out some new one. But yeah, to actually see, oh, I've known this guy for years and we're incredibly compatible. It's telling me, oh, we'd be a good match then. That's like, I don't need to even put in the effort to try it out. I can already see, okay, it matched right there. So from a sales and marketing perspective, I think that's great.
yeah, we're hopeful. Yeah, like it'll help people try things out and then test the model. And so the other interesting thing is that like as we've been doing that and Laguna's been growing, we've been getting a lot of feedback from people who like different networking things and etc. That like, well, so this compatibility model, like, can we apply it to other things? Can I apply it to hiring? Can I apply it to finding friends? And I was like, yeah, you could do that, but we're focused on and disrupting the online dating space and matchmaking space. But actually, a few months ago, it kind of clicked that like with what we've built, like there's so many important problems. Like the matchmaking problem is almost universal across different human domains. So, for example, like what's the arc? What's the process of pain in dating? People have a need in their life, and they go to some matchmaking platform, some blind marketplace, and you meet a bunch of people. And draining is dating. Sorry, dating is draining.
Yeah.
So people might try 10, 20, sometimes 50 dates, not find someone they click with, and then give up, right? And usually blame themselves. But like, right. And so, it's this burnout process that Laguna's, right? Like that's the real value. It's not that like, oh, we get you a relationship faster. It's that like, well, we get you, this kind of technology can get you a relationship at all, right? Because
Right.
everyone gives up,
Yeah.
especially women, because they have so much date abundance, but they keep going on the wrong dates, you know?
Yeah.
And so similarly, like look at these other domains. Like let's say we know a lot of entrepreneurs. Like let's say you're looking for a co-founder. Like, how do you do that from scratch? Well, the de facto market leader now is Y Combinator co-founder matching, right? And so people go on there and like, what's the feedback? Like people, on Reddit say it's like a shit show. It's kind of chaotic. A lot of people, yeah, you're matching at random. And you know what? I'd rather go on a bad first date with someone than try to start a company with someone, right? So like,
Right.
and
Yeah,
it not working,
absolutely. Yeah.
right? But like, so people will do something like Y Combinator co-founder matching, like network with some people, try a couple projects, maybe even start a company once, twice, possibly thrice. And then there's partner drama. It falls apart, and then you burn out, and you're like, you know what? I'm just going to stick with my job.
Yeah.
Uh, and then similarly, right? You have look at therapy. So this is actually a space that I'm getting very passionate about because I'm always like pro mental health, psychology, benefits, etc. And I think there's so much pain, especially with market leaders like BetterHelp, where it's basically like the same as Hinge, where you go through this onboarding and you have a ton of therapists, but you just meet someone at random who takes your insurance, right? So what happens with therapy is like, and I've known people very close to me, right, and like people with some serious mental issues, and like people with tremendous amounts of potential. And like, there's one friend I lost touch with him after college, mainly because of some of these mental issues. And in the meantime, I was like, we reconnected in our mid-20s. And I was like, so did you ever try therapy? He's like, yeah, I tried 4 different therapists. And like, he was in a very dark place in his life still. Yeah. And I was like, well, what happened? Like, and I knew he was like a very like intellectually sophisticated guy. And I used to play therapist to him back in college. So I was like, how did you find a good therapist? And he's like, well, I just took the person who took my insurance. And of course, like he had 4 people, didn't get him at all. And he just had to give up and continue to meander in life for another 5-6 years. I mean, I tried to help him out, but yeah. So like, look, you have this process. Like people go to like BetterHelp, they try one or maybe a couple therapists, a few therapists. They invest in their life stories, which is so emotionally draining, right? And then ultimately, you might do a bunch of therapy and you don't see a difference, and then you give up, right? Without actually like helping the underlying problems. So these are other domains. It's following the same overall arc of meeting at random and then burning out and giving up, right? And I mean, this happens in hiring all the time. There's actually a viral clip from Elon Musk where, this guy is not necessarily a people person, right? He's like one of the most autistic billionaires, but also the most successful, right? And so he has this viral clip of someone asking, so what was your biggest regret in your career? And he actually says, my biggest regret is not hiring based on personality enough and fit, and too much being too focused on paper qualifications. That I'm paraphrasing, right? And so like I think that's very powerful, and I think everyone has experienced this anecdotally. But it's like personality, and it's not someone's absolute personality; it's how they are relative to you, right? And there are dynamics. Yeah. Right? Like the people that you will start a company with, the people that you want to work with in a tight-knit team, right? Like you want to get along. So like a lot of these social psychology factors are very much at play. And like the data, the physics, the psychophysics of the space are such, you're only really compatible with like 10 to 20% of people tops, right? And that's if you're lowering your standards. Like if you increase your standards, it's closer to like 5%, and this is why you have to meet 20 people at random. And again, with any stochastic process, like you get lucky, right? Like even if, you're highly compatible with 1% of the population, well, like on average, like 1% of people will meet their, match on their first date or whatever, right? Yeah. So like, there's success stories, but that doesn't mean there's anything better than random behind it. It doesn't mean like, for example, like people have met their wives in elevators, right? But that doesn't mean you should run to elevators to go find your wife. Like,
sure. Absolutely.
Please don't.
So you're finding that in all these different domains, there's a big problem of not really deliberately looking for a good way to match people, to allocate people to teams at companies. So I don't know how much research you've done in these other domains outside of dating yet, but have you found that the same types of matches work in dating, work in co-founding, work in joining a team at a company? Is it the same kinds of social dynamics, or does it switch from domain to domain?
That's an incredible question. And so from our research, so we have been in the last several months been thinking about the generalization of Laguna to basically all human matching problems across all domains. And so the answer is yes, because, and you can validate this by like taking the Laguna model and running it on coworkers. Like me and my co-founding designer, Ben, have run it. We have an 8 out of 10 compatibility score.
Nice.
and like you can run it socially. And so like a bunch of friends have run it on their other friends and so on. And so, I mean, all the feedback we've gotten so far, and also, your own anecdotal, like you can call your experience anecdotal, but because it's so personal, I mean, it's very powerful. But like it looks like from all our research so far that the model we use for romantic compatibility is highly correlated with social compatibility and also professional compatibility. And like it looks like there are some nuances, there's some different weightings, but it's not so different that like the Laguna model alone is bad. It's still really good. The point is, there's idiosyncratic optimization we're planning on doing for the social and professional domains. Yeah, but it's basically like it's not such a big deal. And we already have some of that parameter optimization already, but and it's going to continue to get better. So what we're working on now, and I mean we started a wait list. So the new product that's a generalization of Laguna for all domains is called Vibescape, and so it's basically a psychosocial search engine, right? Like there's nothing like this in the world.
Sounds great. Yeah.
And I kind of think of it as like Google of the mind. Like you're kind of like searching through like every human being's vibes like on the planet and like finding who you're really looking for. And so the way it works is like, we're also Laguna is still going to exist. But like with Vibescape, you log in and it's a search bar, kind of like Google. But basically, like instead of like searching for web pages or just being like a dating app, you start what we're calling a search journey. And so each search journey basically spawns a Laguna-style AI agent for whatever domain in your life. So if you're looking for an online gaming buddy, and actually like online gaming is probably the audience that we're targeting at first with Vibescape, because so gamer matchmaking is also another huge industry, right? And there's a lot of demand for it. So like the same thing happens with like co-founders and therapists. It's that like people like play online games, like especially games where you're like talking to people like 1 to 3 hours a day. And like that's as much as like a girlfriend. I mean, if these guys have, just kidding. Yeah, I'm sure some of them did. But but it's like, right, like who do you want to talk to for like a couple hours a day while you're playing like Warcraft or whatever, right? Like someone that you get along with. Like personality is so important. Like, you want competence at the game, but then you need personality compatibility. So it's like the same thing as dating. It's like you want someone you're attracted to, but someone you get along with, right? Like so you have kind of these physical constraints, right? But then like the rest is just personality alignment. And so there's actually like been a lot of demand for online gaming matchmaking. And so like what do people do is they go on like Discord and like they're again a quote unquote shit show. Like people are like spamming all sorts of things and like you're trying to find someone to connect with. And then people get a lot of bad experiences and they're like, you know what? I'm gonna go back to single player gaming, or I'll just do this at random or whatever, right? Like, but there's no reason for that. And because like we actually do have the scientific and psychological understanding to do much, much better than random. And like the thing is like with our model, it's adaptive. So like as we make predictions of who will get along with who, and people give us feedback, the model's just gonna get smarter and smarter, right? And so we really want to accelerate people finding high compatibility relationships in all domains of their lives. So when you start a search journey on Vibescape, it's like you tell us first pass who you're looking for, and then we clarify. We basically trifurcate into, is this a romantic, professional, or social connection that you're looking for? And from there, we'll ask you some more refined questions. And then basically, you'll start getting search results of more and more compatible people as you give us more information. And then, once you finish onboarding, it's just going to spawn AI agents that are matchmakers in all these different domains. So you can run these in parallel. You can look for a co-founder, you can look for a therapist, you can look for a girlfriend who's into video games basically every day. And so like, you'll basically have like this cool looking feed or grid of like AI matchmakers running in parallel, finding you like the best people in all these domains of your life and giving you updates and like helping you connect on a day-to-day basis with everyone. Because like I think the next step for what we're doing too is like an AI connection manager. So using a lot of our psychology knowledge, it's like, okay, we got you a match. Now what? How do we help squeeze the most value out of your match with a given person, right? So like, for example, if you make like a gamer friend, it might propose like weekly events, like a Thursday gaming night for like a specific type of game that, both of you would be interested in, right? So like, there are different ways in which, like, in the post-match journey, which no app on the planet does anything like that, but it's such a big space. Like, how many connections do we have on Facebook, LinkedIn, even online dating? Like, you get the match and then they just die in this graveyard, right? Like, what about actually like stimulating like the matches we have rather than constantly searching? Because like that attrition is almost as bad as like suffering from trying to find someone new.
Yeah. And so uh for the second app, the psychosocial search engine, are you asking the same questions, like those three questions? And one thing a question I had about those questions was, so previously you had mentioned how when you give someone a list of I am blank and you get down to 7, 8, 9, they start to really show them their true selves. If you're only asking like three questions, how do you get to that point where they're really revealing their true selves? So
Well, we
yeah.
consider that one question, the I am survey. So the three questions for Laguna they're very simple. It's just what are your interests, who
Oh,
are
okay,
you,
okay.
and then what are you looking for. So very, very straightforward, simple. And
Yeah.
so for each question, we well, especially the who are you. This is how we solve it: is like I am blank, I am blank.
I see.
But
And how
so yeah,
much are
like so
people
the
allowed to
core
respond?
what's that?
How long of a response do people typically answer those questions
It's
with?
amazing. There's huge variance. There's huge variance.
Okay,
There's people
okay.
who do one word answers, which are still pretty good. And the fact that you want to answer in one word answers says something about you.
Right,
So
yeah.
that's cool. But then some people like cram in things about their life story. And, some people get very vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of the time, I mean, obviously, no one's reading these, but from, people we know who volunteered,
Right.
there's a huge spread, which is basically, right, an expression of the variegation of what it means to be human, you know, like,
Yeah.
right. People are so complex. We have such big differences. So like, yeah, the way people approach this question is it's like multiple dimensions of like infinite possibility. So,
Yeah.
that's why it's such a rich information set, with our AI approach, with what's possible with LLMs now when you combine it with like good psychology modeling. But yeah, we're moving on to like, well, so we're keeping this core thing. We're trying to improve the user experience. So, it's the same core things like interests, and then like who you are, and then just finding out what you're explicitly looking for. And so we're playing with it though, because like so it's already a very fast onboarding, but we think we can make it faster. And so we're starting with this, but we're adding different options. And the main reason we didn't do this before is because of privacy concerns. So for example, if you link your Reddit history, we can figure this out for you, right? Especially with LLMs these days. So instead of like onboarding, you could just say link your Reddit, but not everyone has Reddit. And even if they do, they may not want to share it to an app, and that's fine. So, but we're going to keep it as an option. I mean, we could do things like you share like your emails. I mean, personally, like, yeah, who wants to share that kind of information with any kind of company or a startup? So, but yeah, so we're adding different options. Like, you can share your Twitter. Although the thing with like a Twitter is like, people may be less authentic. But we're going to give these options. So like, if you don't want to have to do the survey, we're giving other alternative, faster options. But generally, there might be a little bit of privacy compromise. But I think some percentage of people won't care. So we're going to give people a few options for how to figure out who you really are, and then match you with people you're highly compatible.
Gotcha. And so do you see what was the name of your second app again?
Vibes.
Do you see that being compatible with Laguna, or will eventually
Also,
is the ultimate vision to have like a one-stop shop for any kind of psychosocial matching, and that would be your psychosocial search engine?
well, yeah. So they're both owned by the same company. So basically,
Yeah.
what we're doing is treating different apps as skins around Vibescape. So
Okay.
Vibescape Romantic is the same community as Laguna. It's just kind of like a
Okay.
standalone platform, gives users a little more confidence that like their information won't be shared like socially or professionally. But yeah, and similarly, we might depending on kind of how the user feedback comes out, like for therapy matching. It's like, I mean, the firewalls and the privacy guards, will all be there, but it's like it's the same model. And I've engineered things so that like the psychosocial intelligence that we get from user feedback in one domain makes the model better for all domains. So people like going on dates and letting Laguna know how those have gone makes the
Yeah.
model better, even for like therapist matching.
Yeah.
So like the underlying AI model is unified across all domains. But like in terms of like creating a sense of standalone community, right? We will have these spin-offs like Laguna, but otherwise, like, because this is such a novel idea, like there's no one else that can like thinks of social, romantic, uh, and professional as like
Yeah.
a possible one-stop shop. Like
Right.
it's
Sure.
such a
Sure.
disruptive idea that like we have to see if people are okay with it or not, and if not, I mean that's still going to be the structure, but we'll create these like pools of different apps which
Right.
link to the same underlying technology.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yes,
That
it's
makes
a really
sense.
good question, though. It's something we have to figure out. I mean, right? I see us as being like a very big disruptor in what I'm calling the universal human matching problem. And so, right, like it is kind of a breakthrough insight to realize that there are all these commonalities across these domains. Like, what does therapy and like entrepreneurship and digital gaming and online
Yeah.
dating, like, what do these have in common? Like, but hopefully, like as we've talked, I made it clear it's actually the same thing. It's like
Right.
right, like the core of it is the same, right? And we're also creating enough specialization, like for like different like mental health conditions, or with a video game, like different types of online gaming, or whatever. Like with entrepreneurship, there's like millions of different specialties and skills. So like you still need domain subdomain refinement, which we're going to do too. Which thankfully,
Right.
like AI actually helps us do as well, because like creating all like the specific sub needs for a domain, we can partly automate that as well.
That's great. No, it's true. I mean, when I think about who would be a good match for me in a relationship, I would hope that whoever it is, I get along as well with them as my best friend. So there's definitely right there some overlap. So you mentioned about getting the feedback in order to continually improve the model. Do you worry about like a selection bias where certain people, or like a response bias where certain people are more likely to respond, and then the model gets skewed to overfit to that subgroup of people?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah, I mean, there's a way to kind of out of or back test,
Yeah.
and kind of do like cross validation when you make a model change. So yeah,
Right.
if we get new data, yeah, I mean, it's an extremely good point. But yeah, if we get new data and there are if there is selection bias, it's something we'll have to watch out for. But
Yeah.
ultimately, we can
Yeah.
control it with cross validation and just kind of like a careful approach to modeling. But yeah, like even with like let's say market modeling, like you can overfit to like 1 year or one stock.
Right. Right.
And so you have to balance it out, and so it's kind of a universal statistical modeling concern. But yeah, it's a good point. And something that an
Right.
experienced statistical modeler has to control.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And so, do you have, I guess, some kind of historical data that you've saved up to back test on to make sure that you're not overfitting? Is that something that you guys already have?
Yeah, we have our we have our original data,
Yeah.
and actually we keep getting data. Yeah, but yeah, we'll right like if we make any significant change, right, we have a control set that
Gotcha.
we're gonna
Yeah.
have to pass before before you fine tune to, some sparse users.
Right.
Yeah, but
And
that's also an interesting part of one of our goals is that like
yeah.
I mean, as we get a lot of data, so all right, like people have been going on dates from Laguna. We actually did this really cool thing back in May, which was an interesting spin on speed dating. So I don't know if you've been speed
Okay.
dating.
I've never done it myself, but yeah, you see it in the movies sometimes.
Yeah. I did it twice in COVID, and right.
Yeah. Nice.
I don't know if I'm overusing the word shit show, but it's like you usually go to like some bar with like sticky beer on the floor.
Yeah.
It's kind of cramped and loud, and then you have like 10 guys, 10 girls, and you're literally meeting at random. And you're supposed to have
Right.
5 minutes with a person, but it ends up being 3 minutes because like everyone just gets rushed. And like, so even with their like people you immediately know you don't get along with, like you
Yeah.
still have to kill like another 3 minutes with. And then people where you might actually, this could be the start of a date. Well, it's cut before you can make a meaningful
I know.
connection.
I was gonna say it sounds dramatic. It's like I was just talking to someone that I like, and then all of a sudden we're ripped away, and then I'm talking to someone else, and I don't know if the other person felt the same. It's like it'd be a lot of thoughts going on at once.
Right. And so, I had this idea and I thought this would be a great way to like demonstrate the value of the Laguna model, and also hopefully get some new users. But yeah, so my idea was an AI curated speed dating event. So
Okay.
instead of
Yeah.
just like meeting,
Yeah.
everyone at random for a tiny amount of time, you only meet 5 people that are
Yeah.
highly compatible for like a much longer amount of time, like 15 minutes. Right.
Right.
So like maybe the length of a coffee date. And so we did this like on a small like pilot scale. And like the results were already kind of astounding, like both in like the quality of the experience and
Yeah.
also the outcome. Like, I mean, outcome,
Right.
as you might expect, right? Like, yeah, we had a much, much higher connection rate than random speed dating. Um, but like, it was also pretty cool because like, so what I did was, with like, so, like everyone basically does the Laguna onboarding before the speed dating event. And then they come. And so I made a printout of your Laguna report with everyone that you were going to meet. So you get like the numbers, you get the psychodynamic, you get like the personalized conversation and date ideas.
Okay,
And
yeah, that's great.
yeah, so like you had these so it's speed dating with printouts,
Yeah.
but also like it was like a nicer area, and like it was a lot more relaxed because you had 15 minutes. Now here's the thing: is like people don't want to do like 15-minute speed dates because it's like, oh, what are we going to talk about? We're going to run out of things to talk about. But here with the Laguna compatibility reports, like so as I was walking around and kind of like checking in on people, like if there was a lull in the conversation, like I could see someone being like, okay, so it says here you like motorcycles and you travel to blah blah blah. And so like, right, like it
Yeah.
helps, avoid any awkwardness risk. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, so like, yeah, I mean, and it humanizes people. And I think this happens on the app too. I think this is part of the reason our female swipe rates are so high is because like, women also are so humanized, right? Like with with Tinder or Hinge, you're just looking at photos. Like even with these like little tweets you put on Hinge, it's not super material. Like, yeah, there's a few red flags, but like, and then even like, how do you judge that? It's all noise anyway. So like, you can make your model like, oh, I didn't like that he or she said this. Well, there's, you're not evaluating for false negatives, right? Like you don't
Right,
know if the
right, yeah.
model is like excluding good people you would have met otherwise,
It could
right?
be,
Which
yeah,
is true for
swiping
hiring
left
as
on,
well,
yeah, false. Right, exactly. Yep.
right? And so yeah, so like online dating apps and all these things are extremely dehumanizing. But even in speed dating, like I think our approach was, yeah, made people feel like people, and like it's a lot easier to engage. And I think like, yeah, like that alone may have led to like higher connection rates from the event. And also, it was such an interesting event that like I've never seen this before for speed dating or most things. Like everyone formed a WhatsApp group afterwards and like
Oh,
just
that's
hung out.
nice. That's good feedback right there. That's
Right?
nice.
Yeah, like I think people just felt connected, and so it's a great idea. I mean, it just takes a lot of time for me to manage, but yeah, I want to go back to like AI curated events, and now with Vibescape, like we can run it for professional or just like regular meetups. Like I think like because right, like the event you and I met at, right? There's like 50
Right.
people. I mean, you did an incredible job of like getting so many people. But like as I get
Right.
older, I'm kind of like I'm an extrovert, but like the years pass on, and like I used to like try to meet everyone at events like this. But now I'm like,
Right.
realistically, I know I'm probably only going to keep in touch with like 2 to 3 people, right? In this
Yep.
case, like, yeah,
Yeah.
obviously you were one of them, but like, it'd kind of be nice. Like, I don't know, you work all week, like, you're meeting something like, oh, 50 people. Like, wouldn't it be nice if I just connected with like the 4 or 5 people that like, I know I'm going to talk to for a while?
Yeah.
So that's kind of my vision. Like, I think there's interesting applications for this, even to real life events.
Yeah. No, and I've been thinking for a while. I mean, hosting these events, there's always a few people or maybe one person that would be like the person that you need to talk to in order to whatever solve your problem that you're currently working on. So I was always thinking about it from that perspective of like what do you need and what can they provide and vice versa. But yeah, it's a whole other dimension to think about the psychosocial dimension of would you even get along with that person to form a long-term relationship that lasts, that you can continue to help each other out. So that's definitely important. And I'd be happy to try out your application
Yeah,
at
we
a
can
future
maybe, yeah,
event.
we
That'd
can
be
maybe
awesome.
collab on your next event. That'd be awesome.
100%. And one of the questions I had was how many for your in-person dating event, I mean, how many people did you need to create enough for there to be enough people where everyone has multiple good matches?
Right. So, well, this was a pilot event. So, like,
Yeah.
actually, like this kind of event will scale better, like up to infinity, because it's like mathematically, the
Right.
more
You're
people
going
that
down.
come, the higher probability everyone has of having more and more compatible matches. And so,
Yeah.
we actually got these results with just like a dozen people. But
Okay,
like,
nice.
I mean, yeah, we can scale it to 50 or 100. But it's just kind of like a question of like, do I want to focus on like organizing in-person things or like, stay back to the grind in product development and, fundraising later this year. So, it can scale very well, but like, I think it actually makes it more impressive that like like that like actually, yeah, like a good friend of mine showed up and like he ended up dating someone for a few months because of this event. Yeah, there was just like surprising amount of connections from such a small pool.
Right. And did you get the compatibility scores for those 12 people? Like how many were above 5 or above, 8 or something?
Uh Yeah, actually, in that pool, there
I don't know if you
probably
remember off the top of your
yeah,
head.
there
If
probably
not,
weren't a
no
lot of
worries.
very high. Yeah, I don't remember if anyone broke 8, but yeah, there
Okay.
was
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
movements. But hey, my friend who dated someone for a couple of months. What were they? They were like a 6, but hey, it didn't last. So I guess we're kind of right.
Yeah. It can happen.
But I mean, also it's like, oh, I've seen interesting complaint from some sporadic users where it's like, oh, Laguna might still show me someone not so compatible. Like, oh, like this person only had a 4. Why did I see that? And like, I actually let that happen now because I'm like, well, on other dating apps, like you're still like, meeting the 4s and the 2s, right? You just didn't know about it. It's like now that someone is telling you up front, like
Right.
you're upset, like you should be happy. And actually, I want people to go on dates with, like, at least occasionally, with people with low compatibility, to
See the
realize that we're
difference.
right. Yeah,
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that would show some good perspective, and it shows the user that you're not just giving everyone an 8 or 9 or whatever just to
right,
get
right. So
engaged.
yeah, it's a tricky design question too. It's
Yeah.
like, even if right, like if we can filter, I mean, yeah, we can filter for only high compatibility users. Although you'll have less users in your area potentially. Um, but yeah, like people may take it for granted or whatever, right? But I like the idea of also this X-ray vision, right? Because it's like your whole life you've been operating being blind to compatibility, and like people as they get older, they create some model or the other. Although a surprising number of people I talk to, like they don't really do this scientific kind of like learning, right? Like when you're training a neural net and whatnot, you do like gradient descent, based on like supervised feedback, and right. And so, like, a neural net, if it's trained properly, will converge to like ground truth over time. But unfortunately, I mean, this is part of, I guess, like the education we want to give users. Is like people sometimes stay in a very limited feature space. They'll be like, oh, this person, like, there's a lot of focus on race and religion, which, is nice to have. But like, I mean, a lot of people are open minded. Like, you can relax some of your superficial
Right.
demographic filters and then get much higher compatibility.
Yeah.
And so people who do that actually frequently come out ahead with happier relationships. But I mean, hey, if you want to filter, you can still filter,
Yeah.
and then optimize within the demographic that you want. Like if you need to marry someone in a certain religion, then fine. At least marry this person with the highest compatibility in your religion.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, just based on what you were saying before about the more people at the event, the better, because naturally there's just going to be a better match. I mean, that shows that you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you put in any kind of filter on any large sweeping demographic like that.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that'd be great. We can, like, whenever you're ready, we can pilot.
Hey,
Yeah,
yeah.
just have people fill out a quick form, and then I already built the algorithm. Prints out like it does the matching, the round robining. You set how many rounds, meetings you want, and then I'll give the compatibility reports, and then everyone has a printout, and they go and meet. It'll be a pretty cool twist for an event.
Yeah, no, 100%. Speaking of that, I mean, so at my events, I limit it to like a certain category, like health tech or AI tech. Am I then therefore limiting the crowd, to or the idea from my perspective originally is obviously you want people from health tech to go to the event because they'll have similar backgrounds, they'll be able to help each other out.
Yeah,
But
that's
you're
really interesting.
limiting things by
Yeah,
doing that, like we were talking about before, by limiting the pool.
I mean, look,
It
the
could
two
go
things
both
that come
ways,
to
yeah.
mind for that, it's like, well, so health tech is a great segment, right? And like, I mean, it's very interesting
Maybe it's a
because, like,
different domain. It's more of a technical domain rather than psychosocial matching in that case.
look, my operating hypothesis is that, like, even like one of my best friends is like an economics professor, just got tenure, whatnot,
Yeah.
and like he's told me about like the networking game in publishing,
Yeah.
in academia, and it's like like from the stories he's told me, it's like even the people you network with academically seem to be the ones that have higher compatibility. It's like, yeah, like you need
Okay.
the nexus of like you're working on a similar research subject, but who do you like? You end up working with the person you get along with, and so
Right. Yeah.
so like yeah, the two things that come to mind for your health tech event is like, okay, you can, well, I mean, we could try it. Like, so you're filtering on
Yeah.
people in a certain space, and then let's optimize like the personality compatibility and see what happens. Or
Yeah.
secondly, like if there's not that many people for that, you could take people from multiple segments, and then like, right, we can make it so like, all right, someone's in healthcare tech, someone's in maybe like educational tech, someone has like a brick. I don't know. You can take people from different segments, and first cluster people on like the like who are working in the most similar spaces, and then within those pools, optimize for compatibility. So yeah, you can do like
Okay.
a tiered approach. Like if you want to
Yeah.
do multiple industries at once, or if you want to do intra-industry, just rank and optimize from there.
Right. Right.
And actually, yeah, like right, we can see we can then measure. I mean, yeah, if you do feedback, like, all right, how many people did you follow up with from this event? How many, like contact, how much contact info was exchanged? And like, did you like you'd probably have to check in later, but like, was this a lasting connection? Right? Like these are three ways to measure that. Like, meeting people in a better than random way. Like, is it giving you better long term utility?
Yeah.
I think that'd
And
be really interesting.
yeah, and you mentioned like there's a huge untapped post date market. How about the post network event market? Right, there's so many of
That's
these
yeah, an awesome point. I love that
of these
we realize
relationships
that, right?
that we don't follow up on. Yeah, there's like an inundation of so many connections that it's tough to zero in on the ones that are important and maintain
Yeah,
them over
it's
time.
such a
So
great thing to figure out and pay attention to, and I'm glad that
yeah,
you and I are the ones because there's so much demand for networking in New York. Like
yeah,
there's all these like there's these apps 222 time left. I mean, I think Meetup is kind of dying, but like yeah, like the social velocity in New York. I mean, this is why we live in New York, right? Because it's like the
right,
highest social velocity in the country, right? So you have a lot of people who want to meet people, and like actually, one of my best friends, who I think you also met, is like we met at a networking event many years ago. I mean,
okay,
I almost officiated his wedding, so I guess that connection worked out. But right, like people are so addicted to like networking and like meeting new people, but like, right, none of us are really doing it just to meet people. I mean, there's some amount of fun, right, having like a couple minute conversation, but especially as you get
right,
older, right, like you want to like hone in on the connections that are going to last, that have some
yeah,
bandwidth you can put on. I mean, especially me, right? I mean, I don't know. I guess yeah, like my social velocity was probably crazy in my early 20s in college. But
uh,
like now, I'd like to invest in smaller number of relationships, but keep them alive for a number of years and figure out all the things I can do with people.
yeah. No, I had a dental startup event. I'm working on
Oh, really?
yeah,
Wow. I
in
love
the
that you did.
yeah in the dental space, and I've done this before where some more niche smaller space startup events that I've hosted. There is a at first I'm anxious. I'm going in. I'm like, oh, are people going to be disappointed that there aren't
I
so many?
presume you're not a dentist.
No, I'm not a dentist. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I'm worried. Oh, are they going to be disappointed that there's not too many people at the event? But then what ends up happening is that, and this sort of goes towards the theory of like, oh, maybe the space does matter. But anyway, it may not even be the space. It may also just be that a smaller number of people get to talk for a longer period of time, but they end up having like a very strong connection. And yeah, just the other week, we had like 7 people or something for the dental startup event. And so we,
Nice.
instead of standing
That's
up
not bad. Yeah.
in
I
a
mean,
crowd,
good that
yeah,
many dentists. Yeah.
yeah, not too bad. And yeah, so standing up in the crowd, just talk to each person like a few minutes, then moving on. We all sat down around the table and kind of had like a little group chat with each other where we all just traded thoughts and stories and stuff like that. So it really created a different kind of connection than the usual bigger startup events.
Yeah, it's so interesting that there's a number of times, right, where like less quantity is better, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I think especially for people more on the introverted side, like if you come to like a 4 person table, or like if you're only going to meet 4 people versus like you go and like there's 50 people or 100 people, you might
Yeah.
always be like, well, I guess I don't want to talk to anyone now, right? Like I think
Yeah.
there's a nonlinear effect for a number of people where like, yeah, too many people seems daunting. Like if you can't talk to everyone or something.
Right.
I mean, there's all sorts of things, but yeah, like there needs to be more, I think, yeah, both in person and online for, accelerating like a smaller number, but higher quality connections.
Yeah. Yeah. And even like, so if you're in a conversation with someone at a larger event, I mean, the person may be thinking like, oh, I want to find the person that, is the best connection for me to make. And you can tell a little bit like they're not 100% engaged, but if there's just, 5 people there, there's no one else to think about in the back of your head. Like, oh, wait, I want to meet someone who's like an expert in this specific area. And so that
Mhm.
little like social nuance that you pick up on when you're talking to someone, like, oh, they're not preoccupied with trying to find someone who's like a better connection to have.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like right. That's another downside to like increasing
Yeah.
numbers of people is then you have FOMO, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. This is kind of what I think. I'm only formalizing this thought now, but it's like I bet people who are more introverted are like intimidated by too many people, and then the extroverts have too much FOMO when there's too many people.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Like, oh, that conversation over there looks like that guy, he must be pretty important. Everyone's like talking to him or whatever. I should be, over there making that connection or
Right.
whatever it might
And,
be.
like, yeah, and it's so hard to tell sometimes, like if you're talking for 30 or 60 seconds, who you're really going to get along with. Like actually, at your event, I won't name their name, but there was like someone where, yeah, for the first couple of minutes, I was like, oh, that was exactly my experience. I was like, oh, okay, he's nice and all, but like, there's so many other people to talk to. Like, I'm sure I'll find someone I connect with better.
Yeah,
But then, like, my friend kept talking to him, and after 5 minutes, I realized, like, oh wait, I'm actually highly compatible with this dude. I really enjoy his energy. Like, maybe
right.
we didn't have as much in common on the surface, but like, yeah, he's actually a very like interesting and funny guy. So yeah,
Yeah,
I almost missed out right there. So yeah, it's really tricky, and I think we just take for granted that like things like, and I see people say that, and like there are these like really poorly thought out articles I see sometimes, like that are like anti matchmaking or anything that like, oh, dating's all random. Like to think that you could do better is heresy, or is misguided. Like, I mean, yeah, these are not. I think that's not a very cerebral or I think academically enlightened approach to this, but like I think when it comes to like socializing, meeting people, we're kind of in the age where when was it I was going to say Harrison Ford, Henry Ford,
yeah,
was inventing the cars. Like he's like, if I asked people what they wanted, uh, they would say, right, what, like a faster horse. Right
right.
now, when it comes to like dating apps, people are like, oh, I think I should have something that has more people on it, or it has like more filters for like other superficial demographics, or I want to go to events with more people, or something, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, I think that, right. These are not the real solutions to the problem, right? We need like
right.
some deeper intelligence, acknowledging the uniqueness and depths of who people are, and then some basic science on top of what attracts with what. And
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I think right, this is the right direction. And yeah, there are some other startups in this space, or I mean, not exactly in the space, but like there are things like you see a lot of demand for like, right, I want to meet people, but I want more compatibility. Like, so you might have like a running club for entrepreneurs in New York, and hey, that's great. It's probably fun, right? But like, I mean, another real problem, and this is one of the big goals with Vibescape, is that like, so there's so much demand for like niche connection. Um, but every time someone makes a product for a niche, you suffer the cold start problem. And like, you can make the best designed damn product for one of these niches, like making like a knitting club for middle-aged housewives in Wichita,
right.
Kansas. But guess what? What are you going to do? You're going to go make that app, make the best damn looking app anyone's ever seen. Then what's going to
Oh,
happen? You need to go market it. Okay, what are you going to do? Organic virality on TikTok, or are you going to do paid ads? Right. And then with paid ads, and believe me, I know this because the cold start problem in like online dating is the worst because it's not just proximity. You have to have like opposite genders in the same age range, in the same attractiveness range, etc. And now we're also adding compatibility filters. So, but like even just getting people in the same age, sex, and location, your cost of customer acquisition goes through the roof. So you're going to
oh,
tell me that like a Wichita knitting club, that even if it's perfectly designed for that niche, like they're not going to have a lot of budget, right? Like, so what, they're going to
right.
spend $50, $100 per user, right? Like
Yeah,
just to like advertise the product. And right, same with the running clubs for entrepreneurs in New York, or anything. It's like you have absurd CACs, right? When you're trying to target a niche. And so, like, so that's why I think part of like the idea with Vibescape is that like, look, like, yeah, like it's basically prohibitive if you try to target one niche at a time. So with Vibescape, we're going after like things with big demand, like therapists or co-founders or video
yeah,
gamers. But all these people have other interests. Like if you're a gamer, you probably want to date. You probably are into technology. You might want to start a company, look for a job. You might need therapy, etc. Right? I mean, a bunch of people have anxiety, not just gamers,
yeah,
but definitely gamers too. And but so like people, like my idea with Vibescape is to get people on for one niche, but now you're visible in all these other dimensions, right? Like as long as you make yourself visible for social, professional, and or romantic, right? Like people like with other kinds of social connections, for something about what you're interested in, or that's just compatible with you in general, they'll now pop up as like potential people that you can connect with. And so basically, like I think by creating a general space so that all niches can find connection no matter who you are and be visible for things you don't even expect in the future, right? Like I have this vision of solving the cold start problem for all these niches at once, right? Because like I think that's the only solution. Because yeah, like you said, that phrase one-stop shop. I think that's the only way, right? Where like you're allowing micro communities to form without the chaos of like social media or other matchmaking platforms.
Yeah. I mean, one of the big problems, like as things scale up in these social networks and you're on Facebook, you're on Instagram, is there's so many people that there's always someone out there that's better in some area than you are, and so there's that effective comparison's the thief of joy, where you're overexposed to so many people, and so everyone's feeling depressed because it it just you never feel like you're doing enough. And so I'd be interested to see if the solution to that, maybe it is like not exposing yourself to just everyone, but kind of having this like more intimate network with people that are very high compatibility. And those people will be, I feel like people that you're really compatible with, you don't mind if they're doing super well, even if they're doing better than you are, because you're compatible enough with them that you're just happy for them. And then so maybe there's a solution there. I don't know, just thinking about the big problems with current social media and how this might play into like kind of fixing some of those, because it's causing a lot of anxiety and depression too for people.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, I guess it's been established for like a decade now. I mean, mental health issues arising from social media, and also because there's so much signaling, right? That like people are trying to show their best selves, and and it frequently makes people feel bad about themselves. I mean, so like actually, it's kind of like we're going from matchmaking to like a psychosocial search engine to like there's a little bit like and now to identifying like organic micro communities. And like the way I see it is like I guess right like we're kind of like adjacent to the social media space with Vibescape, but like what I think is that I'm looking at things through a new paradigm, which is that like I consider all social media platforms like Instagram, Reddit, etc., to be top-down social networking. Where basically you take the whole population and you make borders. You're like, okay, here's the entertainment category, here's the little subcategory, etc. Like you take everyone and you just kind of funnel them into pools. Now, I like with Vibescape, what we're creating is bottom-up social networking, where basically you start with a strong dyadic pair, like basically strong, highly compatible pair. And then like from there, you might extend to another pair and so on. And like, so like, a comparison I give is that like some of the most intimate connections we have are in group chats, like WhatsApp groups or iMessage groups, and it's like, who do you connect with in your group chats? Well, I don't know of anyone who really has a group chat, like a meaningful, intimate group chat from people they met online. It's usually like friends, family, etc. Right? Or, I mean, you could be in some sort of spammy WhatsApp group chat, right? But like the ones where you're sharing messages or memes or links.
You've met them in person, you know them in person,
Right. And so like right now there is zero solution for finding such like a pod, such a, like a communicative micro community from the internet. There's nothing out there that exists. And so like I think if you get matchmaking well, you can scale it into like group matchmaking. Again, in like with a very high compatibility filter. And then like, I mean, I think it's just a beautiful problem to solve because it's solvable. We're living in this life and no one is doing it. So like, I don't know. I think there's all these cool sci-fi things we can do with the intersection of AI and psychology these days.
I mean, that really is fascinating. Like really doing bottom up, you start off with the pairs, then groups, what groups are compatible. And you think about it, like, how would that change all of society? If you really did vastly change all of our social connections so that they're much more compatible, what would be like the macroscopic effects of that? It's hard, you can't even imagine it,
Well, I love that. I mean, I think you're getting, that's exactly what like I'm talking about. That's why I'm so excited about this. That's like, I think a powerful enough thing to distract me from just sitting in a closet trying to make money from trading.
No, it would be extremely powerful. Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
Well, dude, I love the chat. Thanks so much for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to seeing how your app plays out. I'm gonna try it myself for dating, so I'll see how that goes. And then next one of the next events, we'll coordinate something and get a matchmaking event going. So for the networking space.
Cool.
But thanks, Sonny, and talk to you next time.
Yeah, thanks, Brandon.